Why are you doing that?
It's on right now.
It's on right now?
Yep.
You're videoing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
We have a YouTube channel.
For posterity, John.
Legal purposes.
No more deniability, huh? So I guess at the last workshop we were talking, you all were talking about scripting. And so it kind of just fell into place that if you're working off of the script, what happens when things go off script? Which can happen. I mean, whether it's part of your trick that you're not doing quite correctly, that isn't going with the script, or just not simply following the script, or somebody sends you off script, such as somebody from the audience or whatever. So I thought it'd be an interesting discussion if we share with ourselves and each other's and everybody else in the room, what do you do when things go awry, when things go off script, with hecklers, that sort of thing?
A large mocha and a latte.
Mocha's fine.
Latte.
Sorry to interrupt, guys.
Not a problem.
So a few of the things that I was thinking about when things go off script is the use of ad-libs, but not specifically ad-libs for the moment, but ones that you have sort of memorized in your mind that you can actually just kind of pop out, sort of scripted ad-libs. I think that that's one possibility of what you can do. And of course the other one is just the straight out moment in time ad-lib. So I'd be interested to know what you all are thinking of as far as what happens when you're trying to perform and you get heckled, you get thrown popcorn. Has everybody heard John's popcorn story?
No.
No.
No, this is probably a good example of not even getting into your script.
So I drive to Idaho, and this great family, 9-year-old kid is having a birthday. They've actually set up a stage with a backdrop for me, and the kids are all accumulating in front of me on the couch and on the floor. They're quiet, they're well behaved, and I said, "Are we ready to go?" to the mom, and she said, "Yeah, you can start." And then she's almost immediately after that, she said, "Who wants popcorn?" Boom! Everybody jumps up and runs into the kitchen and gets back to the popcorn. And they're eating popcorn during the show. They're throwing popcorn at me. They're throwing popcorn at each other. It was, I just had to roll with it.
He didn't even get to his script.
So now there's new rules when I reply to someone on a confirmation. I say, no food during the show. No food or drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great example of cultural mindset of going to movies. You go to a movie, you get popcorn, you watch, versus a live performance, which not a lot of people go to anymore. So you get that pattern of, well, this is how we entertain. You eat popcorn while watching a movie, so you have an entertainer. He's entertaining us. Movie.
Did she realize her mistake and try to pause you with the movie?
No.
Trying to pause you.
Oh, whoops, it'll wait.
Yeah. Well, now there's a good idea. Carry a remote with you, hand it to them.
You know about something going wrong,
Taking you off script.
taking off script. Only you know it. The audience doesn't know it. I know it's used like panic time, but they don't know it. And
Unless you
sometimes-
panic.
Yeah, they don't know what to expect. So you can continue if you can, and often they don't even know what happened. So
And they've never heard your show before, so
Yeah.
they don't know what they're hearing.
In my improv classes, when we talk about character on stage, I always tell them, I go, you are never the one on stage. It might be 99.9% you, but it's never you. You're always the agent to the character. And what that does is, mainly I'm telling it to high school kids, so that way they don't get on stage and think, well, I don't want them to think I'm this stupid or this idiotic, so they kind of break character. I said, no, but for us that do a performance, the idea is that if it's not you, you're not taking it personal, you can actually, the back of your mind's like going, what would I say if I was in this situation? So it separates you a little bit, and so you're helping that character along. You kind of can think about what would that character do. So when you're performing, if you have the genre of who you are, of who the character is that you're doing, and then you're kind of somewhat step back, feeding the lines and feeding everything, when something happens, you go, oh, this character would do this, rather than, well, I wouldn't do this. And it frees you up a little bit more. And that's how I deal with a lot of situations when they go awry. It's kind of like, okay, what would this person do in this case? That sounds good, let's try it. And then it just kind of keeps going, and you kind of flow back into.
So in what circumstances, and I think this is an interesting question.
Yes.
Is in what circumstances, if some member of the audience says something, do you respond to that? Or do you just let it go?
I'm sorry,
Tea.
who ordered
Sorry
the
about
quiche?
that.
That's okay.
The ham and bacon quiche?
No, everybody?
Somebody
Well, we
was.
can split it. So, the question is you're going along, you're doing cups and balls or whatever, or ring routine, rope routine, and somebody from the audience says something. Not, I know how you did that, but just says sort of something out of the blue, like, I bet you can't put that back together, or things like that. At what point in time do we actually want to address that person in the audience? Or don't we? Or do we want to just do a general comment to the whole audience?
I think you need to know what your audience is like. I mean, because that's part of, you're performing for the audience, but they're also a part of the show. So knowing your audience is helpful, because if the audience is a fun audience and someone heckles you, you have a little more leeway to say something like, okay, well, afterwards you can come up and do it or whatever. But if you're kind of in an audience that's a little bit more, I don't want to use the word stuffy, but if they're just kind of more watching, then you got to be more careful, because you're being more judged on what you're doing. And so you have to play your audience. And if you don't know who your audience is when you're performing, well, there's one of your first mistakes, because you're always going to start coming into problems, because you're not connecting and communicating, and so they'll start interrupting because they don't feel like they're part of it yet.
So I was talking with this one guy at the Portland Magic Jam, and he was saying, I don't know what to say when somebody from the audience says something. And he says, I just don't know what to say to them. And it was kind of like, why say anything? Why not just a look, a mannerism, or something like that? If you're kind of struggling with your act or something, somebody saying something, I mean, you might want to come up with one of your canned lines of, well, what was it? That didn't work, or whatever. But I think sometimes, and John's pointed this out on some of my stuff numerous times, is quit talking. The first rule of hole digging is stop digging. And I thought about that. I thought that there was some, if you look at some of the comedians and things of the past, that they had some really good mannerisms. Jack Benny. There's a thing in Dr. Strangelove where George C. Scott goes, he's not slapping his hip, but he's just kind of like, whoa, So I was thinking that maybe there's other mannerisms and things that you could adopt, just for that, without saying anything, is just diffuse the situation, like, a look, a shoulder shrug, or what's that? Just anything to kind of diffuse it. And Cameron, you mentioned when you were performing down at Pike Place Market in Seattle, dealing with some hecklers. And you had some pretty clever rejoiners, I think, with them. Maybe you could refresh our memories of.
Yeah, it's sort of, for me, it depends on what the heckler is doing. Like, if they're there to specifically cause problems, like if they're against what you're doing and they're being actively sort of rude about it, then it's good to sometimes have some responses. And like you were talking about with the mannerisms, like sometimes if they continue, first of all, you ignore it, because it's the path of least resistance, right? If they just wanted to say one thing because they came into their head and they thought it was funny, it's whatever. So you just move past it. If they keep doing it and it actually becomes a problem, Because on the street, most of the time there's so much noise, it really doesn't matter if one person is making offhand comments because they're not usually yelling them. But if they are yelling them, they become a real problem, which, by the way, I've never really run into too much. Then yeah, the mannerisms are good because sometimes I'll just, I woke up at 9 a.m. I come down here to work for basically free. And you're here. Like, you know, it's easy to just sort of like face the reality of the situation.
I think that's funny, that Clark Kent thing.
Yeah. Right? Or just like become a magician, they said. You'll have so much fun, they said. You know, anything you can say. Because, you know, that'll at least make people aware that you're not, because sometimes it's awkward if you don't address it for other people, you know? Because everybody knows this is happening and they feel bad for you. But if you just, you know, be honest about it, sometimes that's the best approach. And if they're, but see, the thing is, if they're making really good jokes, like better than the ones you've written, then it's like there's not much point in fighting them because you'll lose.
Yeah.
Right? So you might as well just like laugh at the jokes. If they're making jokes that are funny and they fit and they're timed well, then A, put them in your script, and B, just laugh at them because they're not causing a problem. I see a lot of people face hecklers who, they just assume anybody who talks during a performance is a bad person and needs to be dealt with. But sometimes you'll see, you know, people attacking hecklers who actually make some good lines. So in that situation, I think it's fair to just, you know, laugh at the jokes and have them as basically part of the show. Because for all everybody else knows, you hired this person.
Do you ever bring them up as a volunteer or as a...
Sometimes, like, if
not to embarrass them. I mean, that's...
Well, I would embarrass them if they're, like I said before, if they're going to be rude, if they're like trying to tear apart every trick and they're like, oh, I know how you did that, you did this and this and that, then usually I will just hand the things to them, or walk up to them and take them by the wrist and drag them up front and then give them the stuff and be like, teach me. And then I go stand in the audience because then it's like, you know, you give them the opportunity to do whatever it is they seem to want to do. And if they don't do it, they're like, well, it was something like this and that. And you're like, oh, wow. Wow. That is incredible. Could you do it again? Like, and I'll do that.
I can see you doing that on the street, but I can't see you doing it in an auditorium or
an auditorium,
stage type setting.
So in that situation, I mean, it also depends on how you want to handle it. I mean, I might. It really just depends on my mood. I mean, honestly, it really depends on the mood. But so yeah, that works well on the street, and then I might have them come up. I mean, if they're, like I said, if they're making good jokes, and it fits better to have them behind you or next to you. You can just be like, I'm using you as part of the show now. And then say you could tell. Like,
tell a joke.
Right? Yeah, you can just pause at some point and be like, or make a deal. You know, like if we make more than $10 in the hat, I'll give you one. Yeah. So, but if you're in a formal setting, and let's say somebody's causing like a huge ruckus, then a lot of times it's fair to just take a vote. You just point the person out and be like, is that you? And then introduce yourself and meet them properly and say, what is your name? And they're like, Jack. And they're like, okay, it's Jack. Everybody, this is Jack. Say hi to Jack. Jack, say hi to everybody. All right, everybody, let's take a vote. Who wants Jack in the room? Okay, minority. I'm sorry, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, you've been voted off the island.
So yeah, I mean, and if that makes it worse, then, you know, pretty much there's nothing that's off limits, in my opinion, right? So,
but at that point, you also know the audience is on your side because they voted the person off. He's still causing problems.
Yeah,
right. So you don't want to be like violent or directly insulting, but indirectly insulting is great. So, I don't know. It's just kind of my opinion. Because my opinion is that, like, if you're going to get on stage and if you're there to do your job and do it well, and somebody's intentionally making it difficult or not enjoyable for other people or for you, then it's within your rights to do whatever you feel is necessary, whatever's going to be effective to solve the problem without causing problems for the rest of the group, basically. As long as you do it in a way that's only toward the person causing the issue and you don't alienate everybody else or make people think you're an asshole, then it's fine.
See, I've never really had a problem on stage with an audience. I mean, I've heard a couple of guffaws and that sort of stuff, but I've never really been heckled
Because you don't do kids shows.
Yeah, because I don't do kids shows. Where the whole audience is full of little hecklers.
And I think you have to have a lot of experience doing, like say, stage or platform shows and stuff like that. Because I think you really have to be able to read the audience. Because if you pick on somebody in the audience that happens to be thinking and doing the same things that the rest of the audience wanted to do, you know, you're gonna lose it real quick. And the one example that I had was David Copperfield was in town here, and he does a thing where he throws a rose out into the audience, and they throw it 2 or 3 other people, you know. And then eventually, this was at the Opera House. Eventually, got fairly far back on the main floor. So he said, "Well, the person that has the rose now, stand up, please." And he could see that she stood. He said, "What's your name?" Well, she was fairly soft-spoken anyway, but in the Opera House, I don't know if you've ever been on stage there, but you can't hear noises from the audience. It's built to do the other way. Your sound projects out, so you really can't hear. So he said, "What's your name?" And she repeated it. We could hear it in the audience. I was about halfway back. And the third time, he says, "What's your name?" And she was saying it all along. And finally, he just yelled, "What's your goddamn name?" And you could feel it. I mean, it's like the expression of the air going out of the room.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it was like. You know, and it was like, there was one more trick, and that was the intermission. And I'd say half the audience left the intermission on the thing.
Wow.
And I didn't know it at the time. I had a Churchill relative that was actually managing the electronics and stage crew at that time. And he said, they put out an edict because he was so nasty to people backstage. That thing, he said they wouldn't work with him again. I don't think he's been back in Spokane since then.
Is that Copperfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
But they said, you know, it would just, you know, it was totally unneeded, but it had switched the allegiance of the audience. Because it was a good trick. I mean, they wanted to see it and stuff like that. But when he mistreated an audience person that way, it just switched.
Just one.
Or just one.
Just
yeah.
one. That's all it takes.
And now he's got a reputation of a lot of people that saw that. You know?
Mhm. So talking about kids shows and hecklers, you're sitting there with 15 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do? Just plow through, or do you try to stick to your scripts? Or?
When they say, "I know how that's done," I usually just say, I know. And it just confirms to them that I know that they know how it's done. Now, when they see, when I flash something,
If I want to qualify that.
let me clarify. The cups and balls, and I've had them say, maybe once or twice in my long career, I'd say, "I saw a ball under there." I just move on. I just don't say anything.
Do you ever use the line, can you keep a secret? I can keep a secret, can you keep a secret? I mean, that's just a real old one.
Yeah, I've used that a few times, but yeah, not
That would
much.
go over the heads of the kids a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It might go over the heads of children. You keep a secret? Yeah, so can I. Like,
So what?
I mean, at least it'll shut them up for a minute. But when it comes to kids, I really don't know what to do. So, good on you. I don't know how to do in that situation.
Well, often the kids will come up to you and ask to come up. At Fantasy Flight, I had a tackle kid who wanted to get, I had this sheepdog puppet. It was ongoing line that the North Pole Guard comes in there and makes sure certain Murray isn't there. Murray's off limits. And so I put Murray in this box, and the guard comes in, he goes, "Where's Murray?" This kid got up and dove under my table to get Murray, almost knocking the table over. And so I had to grab the kid, physically. He was determined to get that puppet out of that box. So with kids, you often get them come up, just walk up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any barriers, really.
No, and the parents aren't there. They've got these
Yeah.
elves with them who some are not too.
So do you ever put a piece of rope down, or
No, I don't,
crime scene tape.
not that I don't have much room to do that, I just try, okay, you need to sit down so others can see.
I've done the rope before, and it's fun to other kids to help police the other kids.
Oh,
They know the rule. You know, you stay here. The main problem is that they keep on scooch forward, scooch.
yeah,
And all of a sudden you're like, hello. So you put the rope out as a boundary, and you go, okay, I can get this far. And you'll see them, their toe will go over the rope, and the kid next to him's like, you know, so you're kind of almost ready to be a referee at any moment. But it does give them a barrier. They know the rules, and they'll help police each other.
So kind of getting back to getting off script and things like that. Again, trying to steer this conversation. What is the best thing to do? What is the knowing your audience, having some pre-canned lines, having some ad libs, some pre-formed ad libs, I guess. What else is there? I mean, you're going along, you're doing your cups and balls, it's all scripted out, and all of a sudden something just happens.
I have two examples.
And yeah, Lamb, I was going to ask you.